Little mistake earlier, did not record any audio. So, we're trying this again. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I don't know what time it is. I would like to look at an LSAT game today. This is from the Analytical Reasoning section of the LSAT. Specifically, this is the second game from Section 2 of the June 1991 LSAT. A small software firm has 4 offices numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each of its offices has exactly 1 computer and exactly 1 printer. Each of these 8 machines was bought in either 1987, 1988, or 1989. The 8 machines were bought in a manner consistent with the following conditions. So the first game from this section was what we call an order game, where our task is to place elements in order. And being that this particular game mentions 1987, 1988, or 1989, we might be thinking, oh, this is another order game or an arrangements game where I'm arranging these computers and printers into certain years. But I don't think that's the best way to conceive of this one, the best way to set this one up. Because as we look at the clues and the questions, we can see, it's all about the computer in Office 2, the printer in Office 1, the questions themselves. You can see the answer choices, computer in Office 2, printer in Office 4. And so I think it's probably better to set this one up where our main task is grouping these elements into the offices. So I'm going to set this up 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in each of the offices, I'm going to have a computer on top and a printer. So computer over printer. The elements themselves in that case end up being these years, 87, 88, and 89. And we're going to reuse these elements a bunch of times. Now you can tell this is not a one-to-one order game. We have 3 elements that we're placing into 8 different spaces. We have 3 years that are going into 4 offices, and each of those 4 offices has both a computer and a printer. So that's going to make this a little bit more complicated. We're always looking for that one-to-one relationship, 7 elements for 7 spaces. That tends to make things easier. So I know this probably would not be the first game I would do in any given section. But that's enough for our setup. Let's go ahead and get into the clues. The computer in each office was bought either in an earlier year than or in the same year as the printer in that office. So the computer in a given office always comes before or in the same year as the printer. You might think, oh, well, let's set this up like mathematically, computer less than or equal to printer. Most of the time, though, if you can symbolize something mathematically, that's not typically the best way to symbolize what's going on. It doesn't always show us precisely what's happening. I think it's okay in this case, but I just tend to avoid using mathematical symbols as I'm trying to symbolize these conditions. The computer in Office 2 and the printer in Office 1 were bought in the same year. So computer in Office 2, printer in Office 1, same year. And just so I can visualize that, computer 2 and printer 1, that would be that relationship right there. The computer in Office 3 and the printer in Office 4 were bought in the same year, and so that looks like that. The computer in Office 2 and the computer in Office 3 were not bought in the same year. So these two up here are not going to be the same. And then my favorite kind of clue, it simply tells us the computer in Office 1 and the printer in Office 3 were bought in 1988. So we can put those right on the diagram. Computer in Office 1, printer in Office 3 were bought in 1988. At this point, we want to think through what deductions can we come up with. For example, if the computer in Office 1 was bought in 88, we know that the printer in Office 1 could be that same year, 88, or a later year, 89. But no matter what, it cannot be 87. And since the computer on Office 2 always matches that, then this one also cannot be 87. In the same way, if the printer in Office 3 was bought in 1988, then that means there's no way that the computer was bought in 89, could be 88 the same year, or a previous year, 87, but can't be later, 89. And if that's not 89, then Office 4's printer cannot have been bought in 89 either. You might think, oh, what's going on up here with 2 and 3 not 87 and not 89? Can we say that they're both 88 or something? But of course the problem with that is that that clue actually told us the computer in Offices 2 and 3 were not bought in the same year. So just because one is not 87 and one is not 89, we definitely don't want them both in 1988. What else could we say? I guess there is a couple other deductions here, or there are a couple other deductions here. If the computer in Office 2 is not 87, then the printer also can't be 87, because of course it can't be any earlier than the computer. I think we could even say, yeah, if the printer in Office 4 is not 89, then the computer up there would not be 89. I think that's all the deductions here, but even if it's not, or even if you had missed one of those deductions, the great thing about deductions is that they are simply natural consequences of the rules. So as long as we're following the rules in any given question, it's not like we're going to get something wrong because we missed a deduction. Now, it is the case that a question might take a little longer, particularly the general questions that don't give us new information, but that's not something to fret over so much as we do the setup. Because obviously what we don't want to end up happening is that we lose time trying to come up with every single deduction in the setup, when maybe even if we had missed a deduction, it would just take a few seconds to figure out for whatever given question uses that deduction. So once you think you have all your deductions, just jump into the questions. And that's what we're going to do here with number 8. Number 8 is what we would consider a specific question, gives us some information to plot onto our diagram. And of course, the first thing we want to carry down is what we already figured out, or what we were already told in the conditions. Computer of Office 1 was 88, printer of Office 3 also 88. Number 8 specifies if the computer in Office 3 was bought in an earlier year than the printer in Office 3 was, then which one of the following statements could be true? Okay, so in this particular case, it's not just that it could be the earlier or the same year. That's what the clue said. Instead, it has to be, for Office 3, the computer has to be an earlier year. Well, clearly the only possibility for that would be 87. Once we know that the computer in Office 3 is 87, that always connects to the printer in Office 4, which would also have to be 87. Of course, the computer in that office has to have been in an earlier year or the same year, being that there is no earlier year than 87. It also has to be 87. And then I don't think we can figure out anything else for sure. We still know these deductions. None of our other blanks are going to be 87, but I don't think we can say whether they're 88 or 89. Again, at least not for sure. So it's time to jump into the question. They wanted to know what could be true. A, the computer in Office 2 was bought in 87. Well, that was actually one of our deductions. That's never possible, right? So cross off A. B, the computer in Office 2 was bought in 1988. Certainly seems possible. We didn't say anything about that, so I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm just going to keep it for the moment. C says the computer in Office 4 was bought in 88. Well, we actually know based on this particular question that's not true. The printer in Office 4 was bought in 1988. Nope, not according to what we figured out. The printer in Office 4 was bought in 1989. Nope, not according to what we figured out. And so B is actually the best choice there. Number 9 we're going to skip because that's a more general question. It doesn't give us any new information. But number 10 we can go ahead and jump into next. 10 says, if as few of the 8 machines as possible were bought in 1987, then what is the exact number of machines that were bought in 1987? And we've already seen a scenario that had just 3 machines bought in 87. And so already we can say, well, there's no way that the minimum is 4, right? So we can cross off E. Let's bring down what we always know. Computer in Office 1 was 88. Printer in Office 2 is 88. And our goal here is to use 87 as little as possible. So anywhere that we don't have to use it, we're not going to. Meaning as I look at the computer in Office 3, which could have been 87, I'm actually going to try and make it 88 instead. And of course, once that's 88, that means that down here, the printer of Office 4 also has to be 88. The computer in Office 4 right now could be 87, but again, I'm trying to push everything as late as possible, so I'm actually going to write it in as 88. And then I'm looking at the computer in Office 2, because I know that the computers in Offices 2 and 3 can never be the same. But if I don't want it to be 87, and I can't let it be 88, that only leaves 89. And so that's what I'm going to write in there. Once I've placed that computer in 89, the printer in that office has to be same year or later, so the only option is 89. And of course, once I place that computer in Office 2, I always have to use the same year for the printer in Office 1. And I just want to do a quick double check. Does that work for the arrangement of the computer and the printer in Office 1, 88 and then 89? And of course, the answer is yes, it does. So how many times did I have to use 87? 0. And so A is the best answer there. Continuing on, looking for these more specific kinds of questions, typically begin with if. They give us new information. We're going to look at number 11. If the computer in Office 4 was bought in 1988, which one of the following statements must be true? Okay, so we're going to figure out a must be true now. Well, if the computer in Office 4 is 88, let's go ahead and bring that down, along with all the other stuff we already know. What else can we say? Well, right now, the printer in Office 4 is either going to be 88 or 89. And we know actually it can't be 89, so we're going to have to let it be 88 again. That was one of our deductions. Of course, once that is placed, we know that the computer of Office 3 is also 88. And then from there, I don't think we can figure anything else out for sure. Oh, that's not true. We know that the computer of Office 2 can never be 87, and right now it can't match 88 either, so actually this ends up looking a lot, or maybe not a lot, it's exactly the same as number 10. Unless, are we doing something wrong? I don't think so. Computer of Office 4 is bought in 88. Okay, printer of Office 1 was bought in 88. No, it was 89. That's not true. Printer in Office 1 was bought in 89. Yes, it was. Very good. So that has to be B. Now, you might be tempted right now to go ahead and look at C, D, and E and just check and make sure that they're not must-be trues, which means, of course, that they could be false. I'm going to encourage you not to do that. If we're following the rules and we're applying them correctly, once we find a choice that must be true, that is the only choice that must be true. And so we don't want to end up wasting time checking answers that we really don't need to. B should be the only must be true. Now maybe at the end when we check our work, it'll turn out we've gotten it wrong. I hope not, but we'll see. Even if we do occasionally miss questions by not checking some of those choices, the benefits in terms of our time and our pacing are going to outweigh those hopefully few questions that we end up missing for that reason. All right, let's take a look at number 12. If the computer in Office 3 was bought in 1988, then which one of the following statements could be true? All right, so same kind of thing. We always want to bring down what we know. We've got 88 and 88. And then for this particular question, computer of Office 3 also 88. I feel like we've already done this. Yeah, isn't this just going to be the same thing as the previous scenario? Then that's 88. Oh, not quite. So this one ends up being 87 or 88, because last time we knew for sure that that was 88. This time we don't. Of course, this does still have to be 89. This still has to be 89. That still has to be 89. And again, the idea is we know it can't be 87, and we know it can't be 88 because it can't ever match the computer of Office 3. All right, so very similar to the previous two questions, but we do have this possibility here. The computer of Office 4 could be bought in 87 or 88. They wanted to know what could be true. A, the printer in Office 1 was bought in 1988. Office 1. No, it had to be 89, so it can't be A. The computer in Office 2 was bought in 87. No, that's actually never possible, right? That's our deduction, so it can't be B. The printer in Office 2 was bought in 88. No, we figured out it was 89, so it can't be C. The computer in Office 4 was 87. That's a possibility, right? Circle D, and again, move on. Once we find one we know could be true, we know is a possibility, we move on. All right, just two more questions now. Now, 13 you might think, kind of looks specific, but as you read it, suppose that the computer in Office 2 and the computer in Office 3 had been bought in the same year as each other. This is actually changing the conditions for the game. And so if at all possible, we want to save that for the very end. Let's go ahead and do our general question next. Number 9 here. Which one of the following statements could be true? So this is just going to be based on either the deductions we came up with at the beginning or the different specific possibilities we have worked through now from the specific questions. The printer in Office 1 is 87. No, actually, that was one of our deductions. We said that's impossible. The computer in Office 2 is 87. Another deduction. We said that was impossible. The computer in Office 3 was bought in 1989. Nope, another deduction. That's impossible. The printer in Office 4 was bought in 1988. Yeah, we've seen that lots of times, right? So that should be the answer. Circle D. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. Circle D, and that's it. I don't even need to read answer choice E. Though if I did, you would notice it is, again, one of our deductions. All right, last question here, number 13. Suppose that the computer in Office 2 and the computer in Office 3 had been bought in the same year as each other. If all of the other conditions remained the same, then which one of the following machines could have been bought in 1989? So let's write down what we know already, because they said all the other conditions remain in effect. So we still know that the computer in Office 1 was 88, and that the printer in Office 3 was 88. We can no longer say, well, we still know this is not 87, and this is not 87, but now what that means is that this, Office 3, cannot be 87. So in fact, if it's going to be in an earlier year or the same year as the printer there, it has to be 88, which means this has to be 88. This would still be 87 or 88. Of course, now if computers in 2 and 3 are the same, that's also 88. Printer in 1 is 88. And then I guess 88 or 89 would work for Office 2 printer. What could have been bought in 89? Well, I only see a couple things. Wait, couple or just one thing? Yeah, the only thing that can be bought in 89 is the printer of Office 2. And as I look at the choices, that is answer choice C. So there you have it. B, D, A, B, D, C. Let's check our work. Let's see how we did. 8 through 13. BDA, BDC. Well done to us. We got everything right there. All right. I hope that has been helpful to you. About a year and a half ago, I made myself a little plan to work through one LSAT game a day for the next year. It should have taken about a year to work through all 320-ish, 360-ish games that are out there. I have done one per day 0 times since then, so I'm just getting to the second one now. If you'd like, you can look back at that first game. I'll put a little thing here in the corner. I do go through the process that you want to take, the approach that you want to take when you look at these LSAT games, how to build the diagrams that make them a lot easier to do, how to symbolize the conditions that you're given, and then use those symbols and diagrams to come up with deductions that help you answer the questions. You're certainly free to go back and look at that. Now, I did do a weird thing where, for some reason I only recorded like my eyes, so I apologize for that. But I've gotten better in the intervening year and a half. And hopefully it will not be another year and a half before I do a third such game. So please, if you're studying for the LSAT, specifically for the analytical reasoning for the games, subscribe, like this video if it was helpful to you. Check out the channel for more videos like this in the future. So I hope that you will stick around and check out more of these games. For now, though, I bid you adieu. Sound of Music.